Let's get back to Vice President Kamala Harris's speech last night in Washington, D.C. According to an NBC News estimate, she spoke to a crowd of around 60,000 people. The vice president's address weaved her own priorities with the dangers of a possible second term for Donald Trump.
Donald Trump has told us his priorities for a second term. He has an enemies list of people he intends to prosecute. He says that one of his highest priorities is to set free the violent extremists who insulted those law enforcement officers on January 6th. Donald Trump intends to use the United States military against American citizens who simply disagree with him. People he calls, quote, the enemy from within. America, this is not a candidate for president who is thinking about how to make your life better. This is someone who is unstable, obsessed with revenge, consumed with grievance, and out for unchecked power. Donald Trump has spent a decade trying to keep the American people divided and afraid of each other. That is who he is. But America, I am here tonight to say that is not who we are. That is not who we are. I pledge to seek common ground and common sense solutions to make your life better. I am not looking to score political points. I am looking to make progress. I pledge to listen to experts, to those who will be impacted by the decisions I make, and to people who disagree with me. Unlike Donald Trump, I don't believe people who disagree with me are the enemy. He wants to put them in jail. I'll give them a seat at the table. I pledge to you to approach my work with the joy and optimism that comes from making a difference in people's lives. And I pledge to be a president for all Americans. And to always put country above party and self. My presidency will be different because the challenges we face are different. Our top priority as a nation 4 years ago was to end the pandemic and rescue the economy. Now, our biggest challenge is to lower costs that were rising even before the pandemic and that are still too high. I get it. I still remember our mother sitting at that yellow Formica table, late at night, cup of tea in hand, a pile of bills in front of her, trying to make it all work. And I've heard from so many of you who are facing even greater financial pressures. Donald Trump's answer to you is the same as it was the last time. Another $1 trillion in tax cuts for billionaires and big corporations. And this time, he will pay for it with a 20% national sales tax on everything you buy that is imported. Think about it. Clothes, food, toys, cell phones. A Trump sales tax that would cost the average family nearly $4,000 more a year. And on top of that, you will pay even more if Donald Trump finally gets his way and repeals the Affordable Care Act, which would throw millions of Americans off their health insurance and take us back to when insurance companies had the power to deny people with pre-existing conditions. Well, we are not going back. We are not going back.
There's so many contrasts here. And again, I'm struck, excuse me, I'm struck by people who claim that Kamala Harris doesn't talk about the issues. I'm struck by all the excuses they try to make. If you talk about the contrasts on issues, You have Kamala Harris talking about tax cuts, not for billionaires or multinational corporations, which Donald Trump is promising to do, but tax cuts for working Americans, tax cuts for small businesses, for entrepreneurs, for family restaurants, for first-time home buyers, for parents. So there's great contrast there, but also
specifics.
Contrast of their backgrounds. You have somebody from a working class family, a middle class family, versus a billionaire who inherited hundreds of millions of dollars from his father. So there's a great contrast about somebody who really understands what working Americans are going through. But then you have, and this is a great topic for Bob Woodward to talk about, character. Enemies list for Donald Trump versus a to-do list for Kamala Harris. And she talks about her campaign being about joy and optimism, about compromise and consensus, about putting country over self, about putting country over party. And yet, Bob, you've documented it in your books Fear and Rage, and we've all seen it play out over the past several months in this campaign, that Donald Trump is the antithesis of someone who would put country over self, country over party. And instead of putting together a to-do list for day one for the American people, he's talking about an enemies list, going after Nancy Pelosi, going after Adam Schiff, going after CBS News, going after anybody who disagrees with him.
Yes, he does. And you played that speech by Vice President Harris. I just extracted some notes from a meeting this summer that the Vice President had with Bibi Netanyahu. It was closed doors. I got some notes about the meeting. She was tough with Netanyahu in a way that he did not like at all. And she's saying, look at what's going on in Gaza is unconscionable, an unconscionable humanitarian disaster. Then she went out to the press and said exactly the same thing and said, I will not be silent. Netanyahu was furious, but he knew, she may be the next president of the United States, so he didn't say anything. So her willingness to go get in his face, the motto, I will not be silent, is one of the things she ought to hang around her neck with pride.
You know, Jim, you listen to that speech, and obviously inflation and abortion and the border and all those issues are central to this decision. But at the end of the day, it may come down to some people, perhaps just enough people, they just don't want to go back to the kind of politics we've endured for the last 10 years, which is waking up every morning and wondering what the president did or said or tweeted or posted or who he insulted. They kind of want to go back to a time when you heard from the president a couple times a week at a bill signing or a foreign trip or something like that. It's you know, you can't put your finger exactly on an issue in that case. It's just a feel and an energy that she taps into in a speech like that, where she says, we're not going back to that, we're going forward.
Well, you know, I remember that moment, that convention speech, where you really first saw this in a powerful way in prime time, and you saw that that was going to be a powerful message. But the country is so divided. The voters are so hard set that, you know, we'll know in a few days. You forget that what this time of year feels like every 4 years. But it seemed like a powerful message then. She's sticking with it, and she brought it home again last night.
Jonathan, when you look at how tight this is still, right going into Tuesday, I think a lot of people are starting to think what happens afterwards. And Mike was on the program earlier and said at 9:30 p.m. on Tuesday night, whether he's won or not, we can pretty much guarantee that Donald Trump is going to declare victory. And the days that follow the election and how that actually gets sorted out, and the amount of processes that Republicans have already put in place to try to litigate this, whether fairly or unfairly, after the election, people are very concerned about that already.
Oh, no question. There are some people I've spoken to inside and outside of government who feel like what the Republicans have worked up to contest this year's election results will dwarf what they did in 2020. And we're seeing it from Donald Trump, who has once again refused to commit to conceding if he were to lose. We are seeing it, some believe, from the sort of chest thumping and boasting we're hearing from Trump and his allies, really saying this is going to not just be a win, but a blowout, sort of priming their supporters to know this is going to be a win, and therefore, if we lose, the only way we could have lost if it's stolen. Yeah.
Can I interrupt you on that? Because we've had this conversation offline. You look at the numbers. You even look at the internal polls from both sides. For the people who are serious, and they will tell you it's a tie. They have no idea whether their model has it right or not. If Trump's model is right, then they think he will win. If Harris's model is right, the Harris team thinks they will win. And it is so close right now based on all polls, internal and external. And it basically depends on, will the Trump team be able to get out younger male voters to vote against Harris? Will the Biden team or the Harris team, by the way, and anybody in the Harris team will tell you this, the millions and millions of dollars that Joe Biden invested into turnout operations because he was an old line Paul. And at the time they're going, okay, old man, let's do memes. So let's do this. Let's do that. They're now saying it's a damn good thing Biden invested all that money into the ground game, because in these tie races, I don't know if this year will be the exception to the rule, but if it's tied, tie doesn't go to the runner. It goes to the person that has the best ground game. And right now, most people would say that's the Harris campaign. But my question here is, if the campaigns are privately admitting this race is tied, if all of the national polls and all of the state polls are within the margins of error, why is it that the Trump team is playing the media so much and their supporters are running around going, oh, we've got this one, we've got this locked up, we've got a landslide? I mean, maybe they win in a landslide. Ronald Reagan did it in 1980. You never know what's going to happen. Maybe Harris wins in a landslide. Maybe it's tight like it was last time. We don't know at this point. But they've been doing this for 3 months now. Oh, we're going to win. It's not even going to be close. This is going to be a blowout. What's behind that? And if, in fact, they don't win, are they just working the refs to set up another stop the steal violent reaction to a Donald Trump loss?
Yeah, that's what I was to believe here, Joe. There are two things at play. First, the Trump team is going to boast. They're going to focus on the good news because the boss, i.e. Trump himself, doesn't want to hear the bad. There's not going to be a staffer who's going to walk in there, sir, tears in eyes, that whole thing, and say, sir, we're losing. Like, that's not going to happen. That's not how that campaign works. So even if there is data that a closely hold, maybe that campaign core has that shows a tight race or even trailing, they're not going to share it widely because Trump won't stand for it.